Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here today. It is 6:41 p.m., August 5th, here in the United States of America. Babies are being born, people are dying in the East, people are dying in the West. Wars are being torn apart, and nations are falling apart under
Oh,
the pressure of these wars.
oh,
And the most powerful man in the entire world, as we know it, is well, he's building a new ballroom in the White House right now with his own money though. So it's very good. But we don't care about any of that, do we, Smokey?
not really.
It is true what I say. That is something that's happening right now.
I'll take
But
your word for it. I didn't know about it.
yeah, I'll send you an article later. But we're not going to worry about any of that because we are focused on what are we focused on right now?
Philosophy.
Damn straight. Yes, we are. Smokey, how are you doing today?
I am doing great. It's 142 degrees outside, and this bear has peanut butter and honey.
Hell yeah. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. That's exactly what you need under threat of dehydration. Peanut butter and honey. Love to
Actually,
hear it.
actually, truth be told, I made a bunch of I pickled a bunch of cucumbers the other day, and I was eating them earlier today. And I don't know if you know this or not, but bears like vinegar.
Yeah, I've heard that. That has been told. It's a good palate cleanser in between the honey. That's what I'm told.
Yeah. It's
Very
good for
cool.
your joints
Oh, very good.
and your
That's
blood
good.
pressure, and it probably cures cancer.
Okay. Wait, are you fucking around with that one or is that
This
legit?
this is not medical advice.
Okay. Just making sure. I didn't know if there's some sort of research coming out that was potentially, vinegar being helpful for, it doesn't. That was a stupid question on my part. That was obviously a joke. Okay, well, you want to catch us up? What did we cover last time before we
Sure.
start
Okay.
this?
So last time we were finishing up on quantity, the concept of quantity and how we can use quantity. The really fascinating thing, and thank you for asking, because I was thinking about this earlier today.
Okay,
Today we're starting the second part of categories, which is
that's right.
funny because he didn't write it in terms of parts, which would be construed as a category. I say the second part, the second section, and but that's what the author did in the translation is they created categories. Section one, part one, section two,
Hmm.
and so up until now, we had a long discourse on what is substance, and then we had a discourse on what is quantity, and these are very much concepts or ways of categorizing things that most of us in the modern era have grown up on. Yes,
Yeah.
the physical versus the metaphysical, and there was a whole big separation of the two in the 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries.
Mm.
um and then in the concept of the four levels of data that most people in the sciences now use and that most of us also use in our daily lives weren't really codified until the middle part of the last century.
Okay.
And so what we've been doing is basically reading about the foundations of those ideas that um that were initiated 2000 more than 2000 years ago.
Right.
What is the physical world? How do I know what the physical world is? What's a quantity? How do I know what types of quantities there are?
Hmm.
And the reality is now that we're in section two and we're starting part seven of section two today, we're going to start talking about the concept of relative and its derivative idea of relativity,
Okay.
which, most people think some German guy with funny hair who liked to stick out his tongue when he got his photo taken came up with the idea. But once again, this is an idea that goes back over 2000 years.
Right.
Are we ready?
I'm super ready to dig in.
All right. So, section two, part seven of the categories. If we had to give it a title, we would call it relative.
Hmm.
Those things are called relative, which, being either said to be of something else or related to something else, are explained by reference to that other thing or that something else. For instance, the word superior is explained by reference to something else, for it is superiority over something else that is meant. And that kind of goes back to what we were talking about last week.
Hmm.
Similarly, the expression double has this external reference, for it is the double of something else that is meant. So it is with everything else of this kind. There are, moreover, other relatives, such as habit, disposition, perception, knowledge, and attitude. The significance of all these is explained by a reference to something else and in no other way. Thus, a habit is a habit of something. Knowledge is knowledge of something. Attitude is the attitude of something. So it is with all other relatives that have been mentioned. Those terms then are called relative, the nature of which is explained by reference to something else. The preposition of, or some other prepositions being used to indicate the relationship. And if you've ever taken a lesson in Latin based languages, de.
Gotcha. Okay.
Thus, and we can do Greek later. Thus, one, and well, it's the problem with the Greek language, actually.
Oh,
Thus,
only one.
well, that is true. Thus, one mountain is called great in comparison with another mountain. And I'm sort of reading over it and doing some editing here. For the
Sure.
mountain claims this attribute by comparison with something else.
Mm.
Again, that which is called similar must be similar to something else. And all other such attributes have this external reference. It is to be noted that lying and standing and sitting are particular attitudes, but attitude is itself a relative term. To lie, to stand, to be seated are not themselves attitudes, but take their name from the aforesaid attitudes. And this becomes important later when we start talking about relation.
Okay.
But what he's basically saying is if I say something is lying or something is standing or something is sitting, it tells me something about the attitude.
Right.
But if I lie or I stand or I am seated, that's not talking about the attitude. That's talking about my relation in space. That's talking about my not my relation, my position.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. It is possible for relatives to have contraries. Thus, virtue has a contrary, vice, these both being relatives. Knowledge, too, has a contrary, ignorance. But this is not the mark of all relatives. Double and triple have no contrary, nor indeed has any such term. It also appears that relatives can admit a variation of degree, for like and unlike, equal and unequal, have the modifications more and less applied to them.
Right.
And each of these is relative in character. For the terms like and unlike bear a reference to something external. Yet again, it is not every relative term that admits a variation of degree. No term such as double admits of this modification. And we're going to end the reading right there.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Um,
I'm throwing you a curveball tonight.
no, that's okay. Before anything else, the saying that double and triple don't have, as relatives, don't have contrary
Yes.
doesn't make immediate sense to me because of fractions.
Right.
Okay. Like I understand how, in the previous section why they didn't have contraries, and that made sense to me. But if we're talking about something in relation to something else, if you have if you have a thing and then you have double,
Hmm.
and then you go back to that thing and then you have half, then the half would be contrary to the double, no?
And when did we learn algebra?
Oh, right. Okay. Sorry. I'm introducing an anachronism into the minor.
I'm not saying you're right. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying this is what he's saying, that some relatives do have contraries and some don't. And then he gives an example.
Was this before algebra, really?
This was at the beginnings of algebra.
Yeah, algebra was
But
getting developed,
algebra
right?
wasn't really
Yeah.
codified for another 1500 years.
Okay. Gotcha. So that makes more sense. Okay.
Back then, the rage was geometry.
Right. Okay.
Now, you can make a case that, yes, you're right. 1 over 2 is contrary to 2 over 1. But you can also make a case that it's not contrary.
Well, I wouldn't say that 1/2 is contrary to 2/1 because that's not relative.
What are they both relative to?
I guess you could argue that they're relative to 1 because of how
Yes.
you wrote it.
Yes. They are both relative to 1. And the reason I know they're both relative to 1 is because
They both have.
we learned in about fourth grade that what do I do if I multiply two fractions and I have a number that is in the numerator for one of the numbers and a number in the denominator that is also the same number? What can I do with those two numbers?
Cross them out, right? Or something.
Cross them out
Yeah.
and replace it with what number?
One, one,
One.
one. Sorry.
So what is 1/2 times 2 over 1?
One. Yeah. No, but
But that's multiplicative. That's not relative. And the counter
right.
argument would be relative is linear. Well, what's 1/2 plus 2?
2.5.
2.5. So we didn't get back to 1, did we?
No, but that's the point that I'm making there is
Yep.
that mathematically, these things are existing
Yes.
on their own. Individually, they're existing, right?
Yes.
But in when we, in language, when we're speaking about something or we're addressing something, if we refer to double and we refer to half, then that's relative, as Aristotle's noting, and the contrary to one would be the other.
Right.
The same way that lesser and greater, right? If I said that okay, well, obviously we're
Well,
on the same
no, no, no.
page. I forgot
This
that
is
algebra was really,
most people who are trained in mathematics at the very beginning are generally taught that there are only three things you can do in mathematics.
what add, wait, so add and subtract, multiply and
No, no, no,
divide.
no, 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 no. Only three things you can do. Try
Okay.
again. You only got three because you were rattling off four or five things.
Oh, well, I thought add addition slash subtraction, but okay. Um, I don't know.
You're thinking the right way, by the way. I'm just being a jerk.
Okay, what? Count up, count down, and cut it into pieces.
Nope. Nope.
Okay, I don't know. What
When
is
I
it?
stepped on you, I broke your concentration. I apologize. You were actually on the right path, and I'm the one who
Oh, okay,
sidetracked.
because I thought I knew the answer to this. Because addition slash subtraction, and then you have multiplication slash division, and then you have oh, I forgot the last one. What is the third one?
What kind of vegetable is a potato?
A, a root? Oh, to square and to what's it called? Root things.
Powers and roots.
Thank you. Yes, power.
Only we don't say that. What we say is the only three things we can do in math is add, multiply, and take a power. Because
Okay.
what is subtraction?
The 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 opposite or the contrary.
It's the addition of the contrary. What
Yeah,
is division?
the contrary.
It's the multiplication of the inverse.
Yeah,
What so and that's what that's all it is. And you were
yeah.
taught that once again, you were taught that in fourth grade. If I have to divide by a fraction, if I go 2 divided by 1/2, what do I do?
Two
I
divided, multiply it. Yeah.
I invert the fraction and I multiply it.
Yeah, they don't explain the language of this at all, which is
Nope.
why I really struggled with it because it just felt so arbitrary at the time. It
Yes.
was, this is a fucking joke. I remember that. I remember getting really pissed about it because I was like, we're just making up stuff as we go along. Like, what is this? I feel like we're playing jazz. Like this sucks. But
And
this makes
and
a lot
so
of
the idea in this is philosophy, and yes, we're going to talk a little bit about math, but really he's getting at this idea of there are some relatives that have contraries and there are some relatives that don't. Here's my example.
right.
For now, as I've said, as I've stated before, I think this is one of the first dissertations ever written. This is written from a very um, positivist perspective, and
Mhm.
it's just an amazing book.
Yeah.
It's an amazing collection of thoughts, but it's not perfect, and you can't read it through you can read it through a modern lens, but if you read it through a modern lens, then you have to you're going to start running into problems because you have to be able to clearly delineate between what is known now versus what was known when he wrote that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, you could take it from a modern lens and then probably tear this thing apart in a lot of different
Oh,
places.
sure.
But it'd be much more difficult. You're making it more difficult on yourself to identify what things still work.
Whereas what I find so fascinating about the book is it still holds up over 2,000 years later. It
Sure.
still gives us a very strong um, it gives us an ability to really look into the window of how most people still think.
Yeah, no, I get why, like, after reading this, somebody would have a lot of belief in the power of a dissertation done in the right methodology
Yep.
because of its longevity, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that makes sense.
Would would you like to see my collection
I think
of
I'm good today. I
slides?
think I'm okay.
Let me show you a couple of slides because
Let's
you
do
know
it.
how bears are with their slides. All
I
right.
guess. All right.
All right. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Good, 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 good. So section 7, geez, bears, we're not very good at reading. Section 2, part 7, relative.
Wait, wait. Maybe I'm jumping ahead here. We got the predicamenta, right?
Yes. We've been in the predicamenta since section 5.
Right. And then what was before that?
Quantity.
No, no,
Oh,
no, no, no.
anti.
There's the
Anti.
anti-predicamenta.
Yes.
And then what's the biggest that's before the problem? This is the problem. And then you have after the problem, right?
Yep.
And that
Oh,
would be relativity right there, right?
well, no, we're still in the predicamenta.
No, 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 no. The naming of those things.
Oh, it's post.
Right. So anti-predicamenta and post-predicamenta are both relative to predicamenta.
Yes. Oh, that's very
And
good.
and then anti-predicamenta would in fact be the contrary to post-predicamenta, right?
Yes.
But predicamenta 2, if he had like a second volume, that's the 2. The second predicamenta second there would be relative to predicamenta.
Oh,
But
oh, you're getting like 2 slides ahead of me. 3 slides.
okay, sorry, my bad. I'm not trying to skip ahead of you. I
No,
was
no,
just
no,
trying to
no, 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 no.
mix it
That's
before we
good.
get into it.
That means you're thinking this is good. This is what this is all about.
Let's dig into it. Let's get into the slides. My bad.
All right. So the first thing he says is there are types of relative. Yes.
Yes.
So a habit has can be thought of in relative disposition, perception, knowledge, attitude. Really, he's laying the foundation for quality, which comes in the next section. Because how do you measure a habit? Can you measure a habit? Quantity. Can you quantify a habit?
I don't think so.
Well, that's a the reality is, and I remember when I was in graduate school thinking about these things and trying to consider how to, how do we think about quantity and measurements and its relationship to qualities, and how do we measure a quality? It 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 kind of drove me a little crazy. Because some of us we really want to quantify things, but you're right. I don't know if it's possible. Wiser and more intelligent people than I have attempted it and failed.
Well, we see
Uh,
this in courts still today, right? Any type of you know it when you see it doctrine, as
yes,
like if we had some sort of legalistic function that let like a judge would need to decide when uh, when something is habitual versus not.
yes,
We don't have any quantifiable way. We have to choose somebody to subjectively make that decision.
yes. And so
Yeah,
if you think about it, up until now, it's all been about substance.
right,
And we've talked about how Aristotle was really not into metaphysics,
right.
but he's kind of flirting with the idea of metaphysics right now.
Yeah.
He's kind of flirting. So he basically says if we think of relatives, there are types of relatives, and those relatives have to be linked to something.
Mm.
And they can be linked to habit, disposition, so on and so forth. He then goes on to say that they can have contraries. And so you can have virtue, and the contrary would be vice. Well, what's the relative?
Uh, what is it relative to?
In other words, yeah, what is it relative to?
Uh, Virtue and vice being relative to what neutral action? Like,
You could say a habit. Could be you have a habit of virtue, a habit of virtue, a habit
or
of
habit of vice.
vice.
Okay.
But
Okay.
then he
Yeah.
kind of slinks and he does this little wave of his hands and he says that the contrary to knowledge is ignorance. But he just
Sure.
got finished claiming that knowledge was a type of relative.
Yeah.
So a little something going on here with the translation.
Okay. That makes sense.
So it could be that we could say intelligence is the relative,
Right. Okay.
but that's, knowledge of, ignorance of, or knowledge of knowledge, or ignorance of knowledge. So maybe we're using the word knowledge twice in two different ways,
Right. Okay. Um,
which then lays down the concept of epistemology, knowledge of knowledge.
so this made more I realized that I skipped a step. Like I skipped ahead in my brain, and I will tell you how I did it. And it
Sure.
made more sense when I was skipping ahead until you just brought this up. Because now that I know that I skipped ahead, because in my head I was thinking that what all of this was relative to you,
Right.
right? So like if it's relative to you, then it makes a lot of sense. Like this person is knowledgeable relative to me, and this
Right.
person is ignorant relative to me. And then virtue, like however virtuous I am or however much vice I am, this person has more or less of one or the other.
And that's
And
why we quit reading in the middle of the paragraph because that's the next slide.
that makes shit. Sorry. My bad. I'm not trying to skip ahead, man.
No, no, no.
Because, yeah, once I take that away, then I'm trying to figure, yeah, like what's the fulcrum? That's what I keep using this, and that's the term I'm just going to use
Sure.
from now. Is the fulcrum. Um,
A Greek who likes geometry. I never would have guessed.
right? But yeah, like the fulcrum's the is the perceiver's brain or the perceiver's soul or something about the perceiver, like whatever
Sure.
the okay. Anyway, yeah. I get
But
this.
but does this okay, so you do it does make sense that I can
This makes
have
a lot of sense. Yeah.
okay. Well then if we take this, then we can take it one step further and we can say that if I have a relative, I can identify its contraries,
Oh,
and then from its
okay.
contraries, I can describe its degrees.
This
Now
is actually
here's, and
this is
I'm
a good
not
example
saying
too.
he's right. I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm saying this is what he's saying.
Right.
And if you think about it, if someone says you have less virtue, would you say that some people would hear, oh, you have vice?
No,
You wouldn't, but could
I
you
would.
see somebody else doing that?
Yes, for sure. I think it could go both ways. Yeah.
And can you see how when I'm talking about virtue, I talk about the degrees of virtue, I can talk about it without talking about the contrary of virtue, which is vice.
Yeah, you can imply it. Yeah.
I don't need vice to say that one that whatever the virtue is, it's less or more than another, or it's less or more than it could be.
Yeah, actually, this is an example of this with who was it? Was it Mark Antony or somebody? Maybe Cato talking about Caesar and Brutus. And he's like, I thought Caesar was an honorable man. I thought he did this and I thought he did that and I thought he did really well. But Brutus didn't think that he was an honorable man, which is why we had to kill him because Brutus is an honorable man.
Okay, you're talking about
And like he's
Shakespeare.
implying that, oh, maybe that was Shakespeare. But yeah, like there's the implication of like that it's like, oh, I like surely like Brutus clearly, sarcastically is
Yes,
more honorable than Caesar, and he's implying that he's less honorable than Caesar. Well, he's actually implying that Brutus is dishonorable entirely,
I have not
right?
come.
So
I have not come to what? Caesar? I have not come to do what to
I
Caesar?
I can't remember.
Okay, reading assignment.
I can't remember Shakespeare.
I cannot believe you
No,
don't know your
absolutely not.
Shakespeare.
You literally almost just said, actually, you did. You just said, "I've not come," and that's it. So yeah. Between the two of us,
But the point
yeah, you
is,
can stick.
yeah, the point is we can have degrees of a relative, but we what we don't want to do is we don't want to use those degrees to talk about a second contrary, to the contrary to what we're talking about. If I'm talking about a virtue, I don't want to talk about the degrees of the virtue in relation to the vice because
I get
virtue
what you're saying.
and
Yeah,
vice are contrary to one another
right.
because they're relative to habit.
Would you would you call it viceful, or what would you say?
I'm not an English
You have
teacher.
virtuous, and then okay. Well, anyway, yeah,
But
this guy lives in a lot of vice, right? Um,
yes,
and then if you said that this guy lives in less vice, and then if somebody's like, "Oh, okay, that sounds like two pieces of shit," and it's like, "What the hell? I just said that the second guy was virtuous." It's like, no,
yes,
you didn't do a very good job
you didn't.
communicating that. Yeah.
Yeah. Or you could, well, and that's if you want to compare two people. But what if you wanted to compare the habit of one person
What?
over
This is like
time?
this guy. Okay, yeah, this guy became less and less virtuous over time. Um,
But that doesn't mean he became more
and he
viceful.
vice. Right, right. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
And now we're into a metaphysical discussion into right and wrong and good and bad and the relative nature of our understanding of what is right or wrong or good or bad.
Yeah, actually, now that I think about it, neutrality, like neutral, is an ontological claim. So when you
Yes.
start getting into relativity, any neutral point that is like again the fulcrum, that is like ontological there. So you start digging into it, you kind of have to like pass through ontology and metaphysics to get to relativity.
But then it becomes epistemological because then it's become how do you know that what you're doing is neutral?
Sure. Right. Yeah.
Because it's not possible for you to know everything there is to know to make a declarative and 100% correct statement of neutrality.
Right. Well, that is, yeah. So yeah, but the epistemology there is logic and ontology
Yes.
because it's not quantifiable. You can't quantify neutrality.
And that's going to cause some people to get very angry at us.
Well, it'll confuse a bunch of people, and then half the people that say that it makes sense as soon as you start giving them pushback on whatever they think it means, then they'll also have a meltdown.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
But the main takeaway of today's reading is he's saying there are these things that are called relatives.
Yes.
And when I consider a relative, I have to understand that it is in reference to something else.
Right.
It is of something. It is a, and so it's laying the foundation. We're going to be here a while talking about relatives.
Okay.
Um, but we got to talk about that before we start talking about qualities.
Yeah, that makes sense. You got to get to the understand what is something in relation to something else to get into the quality of
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 the
that. Yeah,
something or the something else.
that makes sense.
Because as soon as you say less or more, you're dancing on that edge of quality.
Sure.
Because I would imagine most people who listen to this would say that virtue is better than vice.
Right. Yeah.
But that's a qualitative that I mean it is relative, right?
Yeah.
But what is the quality of the thing that you say makes it virtuous? What is the quality of the thing that makes it a vice?
Yeah. That would be good in that case, right? Good would be the quality.
And now we got to talk about what do you mean by good? I know what I
Yeah.
mean when I say good, but what do you mean when you say good?
Right. 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 Okay. That makes sense.
And so he's doing a very good job of walking us down this path. And he does a better job. And the funny thing is, and this is what one of the things I've always found interesting about the book is he starts off in the ante with this really interesting idea of how, language and how do we define things.
Hmm.
And then he starts talking about how we categorize things. And the things are substances. And he talks about how, all the relations but it's not until he gets here that he actually really starts getting to go, in my mind.
Okay.
Where his writing, his thoughts actually start to get fleshed out.
Well, you know what? I'm going to remember this. And when we do finally finish this entire piece of work, which has been amazing so far, I'm going to come back to this and see if I agree with you. If this is the point that
Okay.
I'm starting to really, get the train moving a little bit here. But
Certainly.
yeah, wonderful job on the slides yet again. Smokey, do you have anything to share with the viewers before we get on out of here?
Um, Plant your corn early.
The son of a bitch. Listen, guys, like and subscribe. That's what we want. Leave a couple comments on the video if you have any questions or anything to say. And we will
And don't forget to tip your waitress.
and always tip your waiter or waitress, not just your waitresses, guys.
Well, you
Somehow,
know how old bears are.
yeah, being old means you have to be misogynistic. That's just how it goes. That's just a rule, apparently. No, but yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching and listening to us, and we will see you guys again on Thursday.
So I guess we're done.
Yeah. Yeah.